Thursday night football, we've got the very highly anticipated game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tennessee Titans. Everybody's had this game circled on their calendars since before the season started, and now we get to break it down from a DFS standpoint. And if we're being honest here, Thursday night football, a lot of the primetime NFL games have not been great this year, but when you're playing DFS or betting on the games, they always end up being pretty entertaining anyway. And what we're going to do here is help you make money on both DraftKings and FanDuel using the help of the contest generator and the Sims tool over at Stokastic.com, which are included in our NFL package. If you're looking to sign up for them, sign up using that link below, and also help keep our content free. And all you have to do that is just like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is only going to take you a half second of your time. So I've already got lineups built out and simulated for the DraftKings slate. Going to favor my top 150 here. And then after we run through all these, I'll do it for FanDuel as well in the second half of the video. My number one overall projected lineup for tonight on DK, sorted by simulated ROI, it is Kenny Pickett in the captain spot with Allen Robinson, Chigakonkwo, Derrick Henry, Deontay Johnson, and Will Levis. And Levis looked really good so far for the Titans. You know, he's only made one pro start. If you guys remember in the draft, he really slid down boards. He was expected to be a top 5 overall pick. Didn't end up being the case, fell to later in the draft, and at least what we saw out of him last week with 4 touchdown passes in his first NFL start, kind of looks like he should have been a top 5 pick. So let's go ahead and then look at how much exposure we're getting to him overall, though first I also want to look at which lineups are expected to be duped the most today, and this is the lineup that has the most dupes of any projected lineup that I have here. It is Kenny Pickett, Connor Hayward, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Jaylen Warren, and Will Levis. So this is a lineup that is expected to be played many, many times by the field. So a lineup you probably want to avoid if you want to be unique today. If we go ahead and look at some of the exposures and actually get into a lot of Steelers defense here, was not expecting to see that. And a lot of times when I do these videos, it's my first time looking at the slate and actually building lineups out for it. So I never know exactly what the results are going to show. And yeah, more than half of my lineups have the Steelers defense. Steelers D is expected to be popular, but still, this is a lot of ownership that we have here to the Steelers. And they are projecting for 9.4 fantasy points at a cheap price point. That's the reason why. And even despite that, I mean, we're still getting to lineups with Levis, still getting to lineups with Derrick Henry, each of them, and close to about half our lineups, 46% Levis, 42% of Derrick Henry in the flex spot, but didn't preclude us from still getting to a lot of the Steelers in the defense spot. Also getting to George Pickens a good amount from the Steelers. If we're looking at our captain exposure, 37% of lineups with Kenny Pickett in the captain, 38.7% in the flex spot. So altogether, that means 3/4 of our lineups contain Kenny Pickett in some form or another. Pass catchers of his, we're also getting to a lot of Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. And then the running backs, about even with the field on Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. So overall, these lineups are really geared more towards the Steelers side of the game, with the exception being Levis and Derrick Henry, the only Titans players that are really making it towards the top of my exposures, getting to 24.7% of DeAndre Hopkins, but that is pretty well underweight to the field when he's projected for 32% ownership in the flex spot. Other captains that we're getting to behind Kenny Pickett, Deontay Johnson, he is in 22.7% of lineups, followed by George Pickens, and then the Steelers defense. So almost all of the multiplier spots in my top lineups are occupied by Steelers. So if these are the lineups that I end up submitting today, looks like I'm going to be rooting for the Steelers tonight. Let's look for some contrarian players. And let's see, what's projected for low ownership? Allen Robinson. So Robinson, another pass catcher for the Steelers. He's projected for 11% ownership, got about double the field on him. So he looks like a viable contrarian option. Steelers defense being in the captain spot. And I mean, even the Steelers defense at all, relatively contrarian relative to a single game slate. So well overweight to the field on the Steelers. What are we underweight to? Not really underweight to the field on Kenny Pickett. It's because we have so much of the captain exposure to him. But underweight to the field on Kyle Phillips, underweight on DeAndre Hopkins, underweight on Najee Harris in the multiplier spot. So what we're looking at more so in the captain spot, it's the Steelers passing game, not the run game. And then also underweight to Nick Folk as the kicker for the Titans, and underweight to Hopkins as well in the captain spot. So that is a roundup of everything we're looking at for DraftKings. Now let's build lineups out for FanDuel and sim them. So FanDuel, Titans Steelers, build out 10,000 lineups and generate them. All right, let's go ahead now and look at the payout structure for the big FanDuel GPP. They have been making these a little bit less top heavy in some recent primetime slates. Let's see if that's the case again today. And it is. So we have the Thursday night special on FanDuel. Lineups done being built. Simulate them out now. And it is a $555,000 prize pool, $100,000 to first place. So I'll set it to 20%. And with this being 20%, whereas DraftKings was 30% to first, and I know I explain this in a lot of these videos, but I have to assume that there are some new viewers here and there. When we're going to see FanDuel pay out so much less top heavy than DraftKings, some more of those dupes that project well end up looking better on FanDuel than they do on DK, mostly just because you got less of the prize pool going to first. So where the Sims are really going to prioritize being unique on DraftKings, that's less so over on FanDuel. And you're already seeing this in some of the top lineups that I have here. This one, 15 dupes, 10 dupes, 12 dupes, 25 dupes. And even this lineup here, 50 dupes. The most duped expected lineup on FanDuel, Kenny Pickett in the MVP spot, Jaylen Warren, Steelers defense, Deontay Johnson, Will Levis. Even that one still was one of my top 150 lineups. And if I had set this to a 30% to first payout, these lineups probably wouldn't be in my set of top 150 lineups. Number one overall projected lineup that I have on FanDuel, it is Kenny Pickett in the MVP spot with George Pickens as a pass catcher, Chris Boswell. So we got a kicker in here, another pass catcher in Connor Hayward, and then Will Levis on the Titans side of the game. If we go ahead and look at player exposures, and yeah, just like over on DraftKings, all of the Steelers defense. Steelers making it into nearly 3/4 of my top FanDuel lineups, and then a lot of the Steelers passing game behind this. George Pickens, Kenny Pickett in 40% of my lineups in the MVP spot, Deontay Johnson. So this is really, really heavily towards Steelers onslaught stacks. Steelers passing game, Steelers defense, and then looking at some of the Tennessee exposure. Will Levis, underweight to the field to him, though, getting to him in 32% of lineups. He's projected for 40% ownership. Who's our next most roster Titans players? Derrick Henry, underweight to him as well. A little bit overweight to the Titans defense. So our Sims are liking the defenses on both sides of the game for FanDuel. Let's keep scrolling down, seeing what other MVPs we have. So Deontay Johnson in 15% of lineups in the MVP. We're getting to some Derrick Henry here at 14% on FanDuel. Derrick Henry always going to rate out better on FanDuel than DraftKings. Not super involved in the passing game, Derrick Henry. So his run game work, it really becomes more valuable on FanDuel. Touchdowns are a little bit more important. And then also receptions, less important on FanDuel. So Henry looks better here. Also overweight to George Pickens in the MVP spot, and still a little bit overweight to Will Levis, getting to him 11% when he's projected for 9% MVP ownership. See if there's any contrarian players that are standing out on FanDuel. Players that are owned in the teens that I'm overweight to. Chris Boswell, kicker for the Titans, getting to him in 30% of lineups. He's projected for 19% ownership. We've got Nick Folk, so both the kickers looking decent here on FanDuel, less so on DraftKings. Folk getting to him in 18.7% of lineups, so more or less neutral to the field, but still a viable, cheap option to save salary with on FanDuel. And then Chig Okonkwo, another one a little bit overweight to the field, just slightly, but still Chig Okonkwo looks like another viable source of salary savings on FanDuel. Underweight to the field on Jaylen Warren. So once again, a lot more exposure to the Steelers passing game than the run game. Same situation in both FanDuel and DraftKings. Jaylen Warren only making it to 7% of my top 150 lineups. DeAndre Hopkins, underweight to him on FanDuel. Underweight to Will Levis overall on FanDuel. Underweight to Tajay Spears. Underweight to Treylon Burks. And underweight to Najee Harris. So yeah, a lot of the focus on FanDuel is going to be on the passing game of the Steelers. Running backs, underweight to all of them here. And then also coming in underweight to Levis and the Titans passing game. So Steelers onslaught stacks it is today. If you guys like the information you saw on screen, you can sign up using the link that we have below. And if you haven't done it yet, do me a big favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and good luck tonight.